What does the United States get from Canada? In your daily life, what do you use that comes from Canada? Do you have any idea? Our essential question today is what drives the Canadian economy? What natural resources does Canada have? By the end of the lesson, you should be able to discuss how the economies in Canada and the United States are linked. To understand a country's economy, we need to look at their land use, natural resources, their industry and manufacturing, agriculture, and their exports and imports. Remember, an export are things they ship out of their country to other places, and imports are items that are brought into a country from somewhere else. Canada's land is rich with many natural resources. There are minerals like iron ore, nickel, zinc, copper, gold, etc. And natural resources such as fish, timber, wildlife coal, petroleum, natural gas, and hydroelectric power. Let's take a closer look at the natural resource oil and how much oil Canada exports to the United States. This bar graph shows the top 10 countries that the U.S. imports oil from. Canada is at the top of the list. Most of the oil that we purchase comes from Canada. Think about our geographic theme of movement. Movement is the transporting of products from one place to another. So think about all of that oil that we import from Canada. How do we get that oil down to the United States? Their map shows us two oil pipelines. The dark red line is an existing pipeline, and the dotted red line is the Keystone expansion pipeline that's planned. There's great debate about this pipeline and its environmental issues. People who live in the areas where they're planning to build this pipeline are against it. Also think about the potential of an oil spill. If something happened to one of these pipelines along that line, what would happen to the environment in the area where the oil would spill? There'd be great devastation to the environment and the animals and population that live in that area. Another natural resource we would get from Canada is natural gas. If you look at this map, you can see the gas fields in Alberta and British Columbia. Again, we use pipelines, those orange and blue lines, to get the gas from Canada down to the United States. When looking at Canada's economy, we should look at their land use. What percentage of land is arable, meaning capable of being farmed? 5% of Canada is capable of being farmed on, only in southern Canada. Northern Canada, remember, the terrain is permafrost, or permanently frozen ground. The 5% may seem small, but the amount of land is quite large. Remember, Canada is the world's second largest country in land mass. What are the major agricultural products? Canada produces wheat, barley, oilseed tobacco, fruits and vegetables, dairy products, forest products such as paper and timber, and fish. Canada also has a strong manufacturing industry. Canada's factories produce transportation equipment, chemicals, processed and unprocessed minerals, food products, wood and paper products from all that timber, fish products, petroleum, and natural gas. Check out this graph. Which country is Canada's biggest trading partner? Highlighted in red is the United States. We've got the biggest piece of the pie. Canada exports 77% of its goods to the United States, and imports over 50% of its items from the United States. Before we finish our conversation about the Canadian economy, we need to talk about North American trade. The North American Free Trade Agreement was signed by the United States, Canada, and Mexico in the mid-1990s. How has this affected the Canadian economy? It's eliminated barriers and established free trade at a better cost between the three countries, United States, Canada, and Mexico. So since the North American Free Trade Agreement was signed, it has made it easier for these three countries to import and export goods to each other. So check out this graph. It shows the U.S. exports to Canada. Notice which countries the U.S. exports the most goods to. Canada is number one, followed by Mexico, and this is due to the North American Free Trade Agreement. Let's review our objectives. You should be able to answer the questions: what drives the Canadian economy, and what natural resources does Canada have? If you're not comfortable answering those questions, you should watch this video again. In our next lesson, we'll start to look at Mexico and its physical geography.